Hello everyone, today I'm gonna tell you guys about Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a conflict in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia from November 1, 1955 to the fall of Saigon on April 30, 1975. It was the second of the Indochina Wars and was officially fought between North Vietnam and South Vietnam. The North was supported by the Soviet Union, China, and other communist states, while the South was supported by the United States and other anti-communist allies. The war is widely considered to be a Cold War era proxy war. It lasted almost 20 years, with direct US involvement ending in 1973. The conflict also spilled over into neighboring states, exacerbating the Laotian Civil War and the Cambodian Civil War, which ended with all three countries becoming communist states by 1975. After the French defeat in the First Indochina War and the withdrawal of troops from Indochina pursuant to the 1954 Geneva Conference, the Viet Minh took control of North Vietnam, while the US assumed financial and military support for the South Vietnamese state. The Viet Cong, a South Vietnamese common front under the direction of the North, initiated a guerrilla war in the South. The People's Army of Vietnam, also known as the North Vietnamese Army, engaged in more conventional warfare with US and South. North Vietnam invaded Laos in 1958, establishing the Ho Chi Minh Trail to supply and reinforce the VC. By 1963, the North had sent 40,000 soldiers to fight in the South. US involvement increased under President John F. Kennedy from just under 1,000 military advisors in 1959 to 23,000 by 1964. Following the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August 1964, the US Congress passed a resolution that gave President Lyndon B. Johnson broad authority to increase US military presence in Vietnam without a formal declaration of war. Johnson ordered the deployment of combat units for the first time and dramatically increased the number of American troops to 1804,000. US and South Vietnamese forces relied on air superiority and overwhelming firepower to conduct search and destroy operations, involving ground forces, artillery, and airstrike. The US also conducted a large-scale strategic bombing campaign against North Vietnam and continued significantly building up its forces despite little progress being made in 1968 North. Vietnamese forces launched the Tet Offensive. Though it was a military defeat for them, it became a political victory as it caused US domestic support for the war to fade. By the end of the year, the VC held little territory and were sidelined by the PAVN. In 1969, North Vietnam declared the Provisional Revolution Government of the Republic of South Vietnam. Operation crossed national borders and the US border now Vietnamese supply routes in Laos and Cambodia. The 1970 deposing of the Cambodian monarch Norom Dom Sihanouk resulted in a PAVN invasion of the country and then a US ARVN counter-invasion, escalating the Cambodian Civil War. After the election of Richard Nixon in 1969, a policy of Vietnamization began, which saw the conflict fought by an expanded ARVN while US forces withdrew in the face of increasing domestic opposition. US ground forces had largely withdrawn by early 1972 and their operations were limited to air support, artillery support, advisors, and material shipments. The Paris Peace Accords of January 10, 1973 saw all US forces withdrawn. Accords were broken almost immediately, and fighting continued for 2 more years.